雅思9分作文必用的50个动词。第一个动词 augment 替换 increase。
Augment is a formal verb which means to increase the value, amount, effectiveness, etc. of something.
augment 是一个正式的动词，其含义是增大、提高、加强。
Example sentence. In conclusion, to effectively tackle the alarming trend of repeat offences, it is imperative to augment existing strategies with comprehensive and targeted interventions that address the underlying issues faced by offenders upon re-entering society.
总之，为了有效应对令人震惊的重复犯罪趋势，必须通过全面和有针对性的干预措施来加强现有措施，以解决罪犯重返社会后面临的根本问题。第二个动词 articulate 替换 express。
Articulate is a formal verb which means to express your ideas or feelings in words.
articulate 是一个正式的动词，其含义是清楚地表达。
Example sentence. An argument often articulated in favor of not paying taxes is rooted in the philosophy of individual rights, positing that compulsory contributions to the state undermine the very essence of personal freedom.
经常提出的支持不纳税的论点植根于个人权利哲学。这一观点认为，对国家的强制性贡献破坏了个人自由的本质。第三个动词 elaborate 替换 explain。
Elaborate is a formal verb which means to give more details or new information about something.
elaborate 是一个正式的动词，其含义是详尽说明、阐述。
Example sentence. To elaborate on the reasons for the lack of exercise, it is crucial to consider common barriers such as physical limitations, sedentary lifestyles, and a general lack of awareness regarding the positive impact of regular physical activities on overall health.
为了详细说明锻炼不足的原因，关键是要考虑到一些常见的障碍，如身体的局限性、久坐的生活方式，以及对定期体育活动对整体健康的积极影响缺乏普遍的认识。第四个动词 corroborate 替换 confirm。
Corroborate is a formal verb which means to provide evidence or information that supports a statement, theory, etc.
corroborate 是一个正式的动词，其含义是证实、确证、陈述、理论等。
Example sentence. Numerous studies and societal indicators corroborate the intrinsic value of professions such as healthcare and education, as they directly contribute to the well-being and intellectual development of the population.
大量的研究和社会指标证实了医疗和教育等职业的内在价值，因为它们直接促进了人口的健康和智力发展。第五个动词 demonstrate 替换 show。
Demonstrate is a formal verb which means to show or prove something clearly.
demonstrate 是一个正式的动词，其含义是说明、证明、论证、证实。
Example sentence. To further demonstrate the argument against long working hours, it is essential to emphasize the crucial role of maintaining a healthy work-life balance in fostering individual well-being and family cohesion.
为了进一步证明反对长时间工作的论点，有必要强调保持良好的工作与生活平衡在促进个体健康和家庭凝聚力方面的关键作用。第六个动词 elicit 替换 draw out。
Elicit is a formal verb which means to get information or a reaction from isbe, often with difficulty.
elicit 是一个正式的动词，其含义是引出、探出、诱出。
Example sentence. To elicit respect for cultural diversity, individuals relocating to a new country should actively seek to understand and embrace the local customs, contributing to a harmonious coexistence among diverse communities.
为了引起对文化多样性的尊重，移居到新国家的个体应积极努力理解和接纳当地风俗，并促进不同社群之间的和谐共存。第7个动词 constitute 替换 make up。
Constitute is a formal verb which means to be the parts that together form something.
constitute 是一个正式的动词，其含义是组成、构成。
Example sentence. While technological devices offer unparalleled convenience, they also constitute a double-edged sword, bringing about challenges such as digital addiction, privacy concerns, and a potential erosion of face-to-face communication skills.
尽管技术设备提供了无与伦比的便利，但它们也构成了一把双刃剑，带来了数字成瘾、隐私问题，以及潜在的面对面沟通技能侵蚀等挑战。第8个动词 endorse 替换 support。
Endorse is a formal verb which means to express formal support or approval for someone or something.
endorse 是一个正式的动词，其含义是赞同、认可、支持。
Example sentence. International news not only informs students about global events but also endorses a deeper understanding of diverse cultures. It promotes tolerance, empathy, and a sense of interconnectedness, contributing to the development of well-rounded individuals.
国际新闻不仅告知学生全球事件，还支持对多元文化的更深入了解。它促进了宽容、同情心和联系感，有助于培养全面发展的个体。第9个动词 enumerate 替换 list。
Enumerate is a formal verb which means to name things on a list one by one.
enumerate 是一个正式的动词，其含义是列举、列举。
Example sentence. To understand why many offenders commit more crimes after their initial punishment, it is crucial to enumerate the multifaceted factors contributing to recidivism, such as socio-economic challenges, lack of rehabilitation programs, and limited access to education and employment opportunities.
要了解为什么许多罪犯在初次受罚后会犯更多罪行，关键是要列举导致累犯的多方面因素，如社会经济挑战、缺乏康复计划以及有限的教育和就业机会。第10个动词 exacerbate 替换 worsen。
Exacerbate is a formal verb which means to make something worse, especially a disease or problem.
exacerbate 是一个正式的动词，其含义是使恶化、使加剧、使加重。
Example sentence. However, the belief that individuals should retain all their earnings without contributing through taxes can exacerbate societal inequalities, as it may result in underfunded public services, limited social welfare, and a growing divide between the affluent and the disadvantaged.
然而，认为个人应该保留所有收入，而不通过税收做出贡献的看法，可能会加剧社会不平等，因为这可能导致公共服务资金不足、社会福利有限，并导致富人和贫困人口之间的差距不断加大。第11个动词 exemplify 替换 illustrate。
Exemplify is a formal verb which means to be a very typical example of something.
exemplify 是一个正式的动词，其含义是的范例。Example sentence. Surgeons exemplify the group of professionals who should be compensated more due to the high level of skill and precision required in their work, which directly impacts human lives. 外科医生代表了应该得到更多报酬的专业人士群体，因为他们的工作需要高水平的技能和精确度，这直接影响到人类的生命。第12个动词 condemn 替换 blame。
Condemn is a formal verb which means to say very strongly that you do not approve of something or someone, especially because you think it is morally wrong.
condemn 是一个正式的动词，其含义是指责、谴责。
Example sentence. While it is easy to condemn the practice of long working hours due to its negative social consequences, it is important to acknowledge the economic success it brings to countries.
尽管由于其负面的社会后果，人们很容易谴责长时间工作的做法，但我们必须承认，这为国家带来了经济成功。第13个动词 implement 替换 carry out。
Implement is a formal verb, which means to make something that has been officially decided start to happen or be used.
implement 是一个正式的动词，其含义是使生效、贯彻、执行、实施。
Example sentence. To counteract this trend, it is crucial for educational institutions to implement programs that highlight the importance of personal achievements over material wealth and glamour.
为了扭转这一趋势，教育机构必须实施计划，以强调个人成就比物质财富和魅力更重要。第14个动词 incorporate 替换 include。
Incorporate is a formal verb which means to include something as part of a group, system, plan, etc.
incorporate 是一个正式的动词，其含义是把某事物并入、包含。
Example sentence. Government should incorporate a balanced approach, providing necessary support to artists for their creative contributions while ensuring that public funds are used judiciously.
政府应该采取平衡的方法，为艺术家的创作贡献提供必要的支持，同时确保公共资金的合理使用。第15个动词 illuminate 替换 clarify。
Illuminate is a formal verb which means to make something much clearer and easier to understand.
illustrate 是一个正式的动词，其含义是阐明、解释，使某事易懂。
Example sentence. The advent of automation and artificial intelligence illuminates how technology has indeed freed up time for many individuals, allowing them to focus on more creative and fulfilling tasks.
自动化和人工智能的出现，阐明了技术确实为许多人节省了时间，使他们能够专注于更有创造性和满足感的任务。第16个动词 alleviate 替换 ease。
Alleviate is a formal verb which means to make something less severe.
alleviate 是一个正式的动词，其含义是减轻、缓和、缓解。
Example sentence. While economic development undoubtedly elevates the standard of living, its rapid pace may inadvertently lead to the erosion of traditional social values. To alleviate this concern, a balanced approach that integrates economic progress with the preservation of cultural and ethical norms is imperative.
尽管经济发展无疑提升了生活水平，但其快速的步伐可能会无意中导致传统社会价值的侵蚀。为了缓解这一顾虑，迫切需要一种平衡的方法，将经济进步与文化和伦理规范的保护相结合。第17个动词 render 替换 make。
Render is a formal verb which means to cause someone or something to be in a particular condition.
render 是一个正式的动词，其含义是使成为、使变的、使处于某种状态。
Example sentence. Paying taxes, while undoubtedly a fundamental duty, may not be sufficient to fully render an individual's contribution to society. Active civic participation, volunteerism, and adherence to ethical principles are equally vital aspects that collectively shape a responsible and engaged citizenry.
缴纳税款虽然无疑是一项基本义务，但可能并不足以充分展现个体对社会的贡献。积极的市民参与、志愿服务以及遵循道德原则是同等重要。这些都共同塑造了负责任且积极参与的公民群体。第18个动词 presume 替换 assume。
Presume is a formal verb which means to think that something is true, although you are not certain,
Presume 是一个正式的动词，其含义是料想、不肯定地认为。
Example sentence. While proponents presume that hosting major international sporting events bestows numerous advantages upon a nation, skeptics argue that the associated costs and potential social ramifications may outweigh the perceived benefits.
尽管支持者认为主办重大国际体育赛事为国家带来了许多优势，怀疑者却认为相关成本和潜在的社会影响可能超过了所感知的好处。第19个动词 reinforce 替换 strengthen。
Reinforce is a formal verb which means to make a feeling, an idea, etc. stronger.
reinforce 是一个正式的动词，其含义是加强、充实、使更强烈。
Example sentence. The persistence of illiteracy among adults, despite improved access to education, reinforces the multifaceted nature of their disadvantage.
尽管教育途径的改善，成年人中文盲问题的持续存在，强调了他们多方面劣势的性质。第20个动词 substantiate 替换 prove。
Substantiate is a formal verb which means to provide information or evidence to prove that something is true.
substantiate 是一个正式的动词，其含义是证实、证明。
Example sentence. To substantiate that watching television daily is detrimental to children, research findings consistently highlight the adverse effects on cognitive development, sleep patterns, and physical health.
为了证实每天看电视对儿童有害，研究结果一致强调了其对认知发展、睡眠模式和身体健康的不利影响。第21个动词 mitigate 替换 relieve。
Mitigate is a formal verb which means make something less harmful, serious, etc.
mitigate 是一个正式的动词，其含义是减轻、缓和。
Example sentence. Implementing a balanced curriculum that incorporates a wide range of subjects can mitigate the risk of students missing out on diverse knowledge areas, while also allowing for in-depth study of certain subjects.
实施包含广泛学科的平衡课程，可以减少学生错过多样化知识领域的风险，同时也允许对某些学科进行深入研究。第22个动词 derive 替换 get。
Derive is a formal verb which means to get something from something.
derive 是一个正式的动词，其含义是从什么中得到、获得。
Example sentence. The belief that history has little to offer may derive from a misconception of its relevance, as a thorough examination of the past can derive valuable insights into human behavior, societal patterns, and the consequences of pivotal decisions.
认为历史无足轻重的观点，可能源于对其相关性的误解，因为对过去的深入研究可以得出对人类行为、社会模式以及重要决策后果的宝贵见解。第23个动词 procure 替换 obtain。
Procure is a formal verb which means to obtain something, especially with difficulty.
procure 是一个正式的动词，其含义是设法获得、取得、得到。
Example sentence. Providing employees with a minimum of 4 weeks holiday annually can be perceived as a strategic initiative by employers to procure enhanced job satisfaction, rejuvenation, and overall well-being among their workforce, consequently fostering increased productivity and efficiency.
雇主每年提供员工至少4周的假期，可以被视为一项战略举措，旨在获取增强员工工作满意度、焕发活力以及整体健康状况，从而促进生产力和效率的提升。第24个动词 ascertain 替换 find out。
Ascertain is a formal verb which means to find out the true or correct information about something.
ascertain 是一个正式的动词，其含义是查明、弄清。
Example sentence. To ascertain the role of the government in funding health care and education, a comprehensive examination of societal needs and the potential impact on individual well-being is imperative.
为了确定政府在资助医疗和教育方面的角色，必须全面审视社会需求以及对个体福祉的潜在影响。第25个动词 concur 替换 agree。
Concur is a formal verb which means to agree.
concur 是一个正式的动词，其含义是同意、赞同。
Example sentence. While some may argue that CEOs deserve higher salaries due to the immense responsibilities they shoulder, I concur with the view that the wage gap between CEOs and common employees should be reasonable and justifiable.
虽然有些人可能会争辩说，由于首席执行官肩负着巨大的责任，他们应该得到更高的薪水，但我同意这样的观点，即首席执行官和普通员工之间的工资差距应该是合理和可以证明的。第26个动词 verify 替换 check。
Verify is a formal verb which means to check that something is true or accurate.
verify 是一个正式的动词，其含义是核实、查对、核准。
Example sentence. To verify the legitimacy of individuals claiming an unrestricted right to use unlimited fresh water, a comprehensive analysis of the ecological impact and the finite nature of this resource becomes imperative.
为验证主张拥有不受限制使用无限淡水权利的个体的正当性，对生态影响和这一资源有限性的全面分析变得至关重要。第27个动词 contrive 替换 design。
Contrive is a formal verb which means to succeed in doing something in spite of difficulties.
contrive 是一个正式的动词，其含义是设法做到。
Example sentence. Efforts to contrive responsible and sustainable tourism initiatives in organizing tours to remote places are pivotal to ensuring that the escalating popularity of such activities succeeds in fostering positive outcomes for both the local inhabitants and the environment.
在组织游览偏远地区的活动中，构思负责任且可持续的旅游计划是至关重要的，以确保这种活动的不断升温能够在促进当地居民和环境的积极成果方面取得成功。第28个动词 discern 替换 recognize。
Discern is a formal verb which means to know, recognize, or understand something, especially something that is not obvious.
discern 是一个正式的动词，其含义是觉察出、识别、了解。
Example sentence. To discern the root causes behind the phenomenon of recidivism among ex-prisoners requires a nuanced understanding of the multifaceted challenges they face upon release. Factors such as limited rehabilitation programs, societal stigma, and insufficient support systems contribute to a cycle of reoffending.
要识别导致前囚犯再犯现象的根本原因，需要对他们在释放后面临的多方面挑战有一个细致入微的了解。有限的康复计划、社会污名以及不足的支持体系等因素，促成了再次犯罪的循环。第29个动词 disseminate 替换 spread。
Disseminate is a formal verb which means to spread information, knowledge, etc. so that it reaches many people.
disseminate 是一个正式的动词，其含义是散布、传播信息、知识等。
Example sentence. The advent of digital media and social networking platforms has profoundly altered the dynamics of consumer behavior, enabling individuals to access diverse sources of information and disseminate opinions instantaneously.
数字媒体和社交网络平台的出现，深刻改变了消费者行为的动态，使个体能够访问多样化的信息源，并瞬间传播意见。第30个动词 fabricate 替换 make up。
Fabricate is a formal verb which means to invent false information in order to trick people.
Fabricate 是一个正式的动词，其含义是编造、捏造。
Example sentence. Some critics argue that news media tends to fabricate sensational stories for the sake of viewership and ratings, leading to a distortion of reality and a decline in journalistic integrity.
中文翻译：一些批评者认为，新闻媒体往往为了收视率而编造耸人听闻的故事，导致现实的扭曲和新闻诚信的下降。第31个动词 ，scrutinize 替换 examine。Scrutinize
is a formal verb which means to examine someone or something very carefully.
Scrutinize 是一个正式的动词，其含义是仔细检查、认真检视、详审。
Example sentence. To build a perfect society in the modern world, it is imperative to scrutinize and prioritize the equitable distribution of resources, ensuring that access to education, healthcare, and opportunities is not dictated by socioeconomic disparities.
在现代社会建设一个理想的社会，必须仔细审查和优先考虑资源的公平分配，确保教育、医疗和机会的获取不受社会经济差异的限制。第32个动词 facilitate 替换 make easy。Facilitate
is a formal verb which means to make an action or a process possible or easier.
Facilitate 是一个正式的动词，其含义是促进、促使、使便利。
Example sentence. Supporters of the notion that more individuals studying business can facilitate greater societal benefits argue that a business-oriented education equips people with practical skills, fosters entrepreneurship, and contributes to economic growth.
支持更多人学习商科能够促进社会更多福祉的观点认为，商科教育使人具备实际技能，培养创业精神，并促进经济增长。第33个动词 implicate 替换
involve。Implicate is a formal verb which means to show or suggest that somebody is involved in something bad or criminal.
Implicate 是一个正式的动词，其含义是牵涉、涉及。
Example sentence. The argument that museums and art galleries should primarily implicate local works instead of showcasing cultures or artworks from other countries raises pertinent questions about cultural identity and heritage preservation.
博物馆和美术馆应主要展示当地作品，而不是展示其他国家的文化或艺术品的论点，提出了有关文化认同和遗产保护的相关问题。第34个动词 commence 替换 begin。Commence
is a formal verb which means to begin to happen or to begin something.
Commence 是一个正式的动词，其含义是开始发生、开始、着手。
Example sentence. Advocates for durability argue that creating products that stand the test of time commences a shift towards sustainable consumption, reducing the environmental impact of frequent replacements.
持久性的支持者认为，制造经得起时间考验的产品开始了迈向可持续消费的转变，减少了频繁更换对环境造成的影响。第35个动词 institute 替换 establish。Institute
is a formal verb which means to introduce a system, policy, etc., or start a process.
Institute 是一个正式的动词，其含义是建立、制定体系、政策等，或者开始、实行。
Example sentence. Schools should institute a flexible curriculum that allows students to choose between academic and practical courses, catering to their individual interests and career goals.
学校应该实施灵活的课程，让学生在学术课程和实践课程之间进行选择，以满足他们的个人兴趣和职业目标。第36个动词 vindicate 替换 justify。
Vindicate is a formal verb which means to prove that someone or something is right or true.
Vindicate 是一个正式的动词，其含义是证实、证明。
Example sentence. The belief that men and women inherently possess distinct qualities, and, consequently, are better suited for specific roles, has been a subject of debate. However, numerous studies and societal shifts vindicate the view that gender should not be a determinant of job suitability.
认为男性和女性天生具有不同的质量，因此更适合特定角色的信念一直是一个争论的焦点。然而，许多研究和社会变革都证明了性别不应成为工作适应性的决定因素。第37个动词 manipulate 替换 operate。
Manipulate is a formal verb which means to control or use something in a skillful way.
manipulate 是一个正式的动词，其含义是熟练的操作、使用。
Example sentence. With the advent of digital technology, news media has gained the power to manipulate public opinion more than ever, which some people argue has negative implications.
随着数字技术的出现，新闻媒体比以往任何时候都更有能力操纵公众舆论。有些人认为这具有负面影响。第38个动词 collaborate 替换 cooperate。
Collaborate is a formal verb which means to work together with a person or group in order to achieve something, especially in science or art.
collaborate 是一个正式的动词，其含义有指在科学或艺术方面合作、协作。
Example sentence. Collaborating on effective urban design, implementing soundproofing measures, and raising public awareness are crucial steps to collectively combat the detrimental effects of noise pollution.
共同努力进行有效的城市设计，实施隔音措施和提高公众意识，是共同应对噪音污染有害影响的关键步骤。第39个动词 perceive 替换 notice。
Perceive is a formal verb which means to notice, see, or recognize something.
perceive 是一个正式的动词，其含义是察觉、注意到、发觉。
Example sentence. Some may perceive the significant financial investment in maintaining and restoring historical structures as excessive, arguing for their replacement with modern buildings.
一些人可能会认为，在维护和修复历史建筑上的巨额财政投入是过度的，主张用现代建筑替代它们。第40个动词 postulate 替换 suppose。
Postulate is a formal verb which means to suggest or accept that something is true so that it can be used as the basis for a theory, etc.
postulate 是一个正式的动词，其含义是假定、假设。
Example sentence. Advocates postulate that robots play a pivotal role in advancing various sectors, from industry to healthcare, enhancing efficiency and productivity.
支持者提出，机器人在推动各个领域的发展中发挥着关键作用，从工业到医疗，提高了效率和生产力。第41个动词 proscribe 替换 prohibit。
Prescribe is a formal verb which means to say officially that something is banned.
proscribe 是一个正式的动词，其含义是宣布禁止。
Example sentence. In my view, rather than prescribing these sports altogether, implementing stringent safety regulations and promoting informed decision-making can better safeguard participants, while preserving their right to choose.
在我看来，与其完全禁止这些体育活动，不如实施严格的安全规定，并促进知情决策，以更好地保护参与者的安全，同时保留他们选择的权利。第42个动词 proclaim 替换 declare。
Proclaim is a formal verb which means to say publicly or officially that something important is true or exists.
proclaim 是一个正式的动词，其含义是 宣布、宣告。
Example sentence. To address this issue, a paradigm shift is imperative, proclaiming a commitment to sustainable practices that balance economic prosperity with environmental conservation.
为解决这一问题，必须进行范式转变，宣告致力于平衡经济繁荣与环境保护的可持续做法。第43个动词 reiterate 替换 restate。
Reiterate is a formal verb, which means to repeat a statement or opinion in order to make your meaning as clear as possible.
reiterate 是一个正式的动词，其含义是重说、重申。
Example sentence. To reiterate, it is imperative to discern the potential adverse effects regarding the escalating use of computers and mobile phones for communication among young people.
重申一下，我们必须认识到年轻人越来越多地使用计算机和手机进行交流所带来的潜在不利影响。第44个动词 stipulate 替换 state clearly。
Stipulate is a formal verb, which means to state clearly and firmly that something must be done, or how it must be done.
stipulate 是一个正式的动词，其含义是规定、明确要求。
Example sentence. Many cities have embraced the concept of vehicle-free days, stipulating that private cars, trucks, and motorcycles be prohibited in the city centre during specified periods.
许多城市采纳了无车日的概念，规定在特定时期禁止私家车、卡车和摩托车进入市中心。第45个动词 terminate 替换 end。
Terminate is a formal verb, which means to end or to make something end.
terminate 是一个正式的动词，其含义是使停止、结束、终止。
Example sentence. To solve the problem of environmental damage caused by the increase in the production of consumer goods, it might be necessary to terminate the manufacturing processes that heavily pollute the environment.
为了解决消费品生产增加对环境造成的损害问题，可能需要终止那些严重污染环境的制造过程。第46个动词 transcend 替换 go beyond。
Transcend is a formal verb, which means to be or go beyond the usual limits of something.
transcend 是一个正式的动词，其含义是超越通常的界限。
Example sentence. The power of education can transcend the boundaries of socio-economic disparities, providing equal opportunities for everyone to succeed.
教育的力量可以超越社会经济差异的界限，为每个人提供平等的成功机会。第47个动词 venerate 替换 respect。
Venerate is a formal verb, which means to have and show a lot of respect for somebody or something, especially somebody or something that is considered to be holy or very important.
venerate 是一个正式的动词，其含义是敬重、崇敬、敬仰。
Example sentence. In many cultures, the elderly are venerated for their wisdom and life experiences, embodying a reservoir of knowledge that transcends generations.
在许多文化中，年长者因其智慧和人生经验而备受尊敬，体现了一种跨越世代的知识宝库。第48个动词 perplex 替换 puzzle。
Perplex is a formal verb. If something perplexes you, it makes you confused or worried because you do not understand it.
perplex 是一个正式的动词，其含义是迷惑、使困惑。
Example sentence. The issue of climate change continues to perplex policymakers globally, as they grapple with the intricate balance between economic development and environmental sustainability.
气候变化问题在全球范围内仍然令政策制定者感到困扰，因为他们努力在经济发展和环境可持续性之间找到错综复杂的平衡。第49个动词 Deliberate 替换 think.
Deliberate is a formal verb, which means to think very carefully about something, usually before making a decision.
Deliberate 是一个正式的动词，其含义是仔细考虑、深思熟虑、反复思考。
Example sentence. Failing to deliberate adequately on urban development may result in unforeseen challenges, jeopardizing the well-being of both current and future generations.
如果在城市发展上未能进行充分的深思熟虑，可能会导致意想不到的挑战，危及当前和未来世代的福祉。第50个动词 ，jeopardize 替换 harm。
Jeopardize is a formal verb, which means to risk losing or spoiling something important.
Jeopardize 是一个正式的动词，其含义是危及、危害、损害。
Example sentence. Failure to address the challenges of climate change may jeopardize the very foundation of our planet's ecosystems, with potentially irreversible consequences for future generations.
未能解决气候变化的挑战，可能危及地球生态系统的基础，对未来世代可能产生不可逆转的后果。